Whoa. My mind's blown by that movie. The Hunger Games is definitely the best I've ever seen in my life.
Wow.
I mean, I'll admit that it was cool, but the idea of killing innocent children is completely morbid.
Oh my God, you guys, we should totally reenact the Hunger Games on the football field.
That is the worst idea I have ever heard in my entire life.
Well then.
If you think about it, that's completely terrifying. If the Hunger Games was real, we would all be in the perfect position to be selected as tribute.
Oh, that's awesome.
I actually agree with her. Guys, I agree with her.
Whoa.
Whoa.
I know, it doesn't happen very often. But the Hunger Games was created for entertainment purposes. We shouldn't mimic it because that would just be dangerous.
But dude, we're not actually going to be killing people. I mean, I know it's unethical to kill people, but we're just going to mimic it. So we're really not hurting anybody. It's just kind of a reenactment because we're losing like that.
But I mean, reenacting the Hunger Games is pretty much just encouraging violence in reality.
Okay. Does viewing minimize or maximize violence in reality?
I have no idea, but who cares? Do you know how much revenue is made by the Hunger Games? Like, the Hunger Games has been sold out for weeks. It's obviously not important how much maximizing or minimizing is affecting anything.
Okay.
That wasn't my question.
Well, it minimizes violence.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But the money.
Okay, no one cares about the money.
I do.
Focus on the
No one.
issue. Okay, it minimizes violence because when you watch something violent, it allows you to release that want for violence in a controlled way. I mean, you're not going around killing people. You can just watch it and you're like, I got my fill. Good to go.
I completely disagree. I mean, I know it's shocking that I disagree with Blondie over here, but I mean, viewing violence maximizes violence in reality. The perfect example of this is those two morons from Utah that set those traps in the woods to try to kill people, and then they claim that they were trying to reenact the Hunger Games. Like, I mean, you can't just encourage violence like this in the media because only bad things come from it.
Okay, so guys, two people doing something reckless can't represent the entire population. I mean, realistically, that's just an isolated incident, and it has no effect on what everybody else might do. I mean, we don't have any way to prove that they weren't even really mimicking the Hunger Games. We weren't there. They could just be lying to cover their own butt. Now, honestly, if we think about this logically, there are tons of serial killers that go unnoticed every day that kill for various reasons other than what they see on TV, or in the news, or in the movies, or here on the radio. I mean, this is just all really different. Stop mimicking. That's not okay. If we didn't have violence in the media, we wouldn't have anything about the G rating, and life would suck. Because we wouldn't have anything to do on Friday nights, because all the movies were terrible.
Well, in a way, without violence, there's no conflict, and without conflict, there can be no movie. The media we witness is from popular opinion. What we believe is popular, right now, apparently it's violence, but, you know, the goal of the marketers is to earn as much revenue as possible.
Oh my God, are we really on this?
Yeah, we really are. The economy thrives off what is popular, but unfortunately, like I said, violence is what's popular.
I guess she does have a point because, I mean, personally, I get adrenaline rush whenever I see that violence. So
Yeah, we do it without...
If you want to go just creating a bunch of junkies across this country and world.
I mean, you're doing it without experiencing the actual violent actions. I mean, it's good for your body.
True beans.
But emotions might cause us to feel
That's
sympathy
expressive.
towards the characters, and we want to keep watching to make sure they're alive and well.
You guys think that the initial emotions we feel affect the attraction we have to the violence?
Well, yeah, it's possible for people to feel sympathy towards someone getting hurt, but it's also possible for them to feel happy about the situation and feel no sympathy towards the person getting hurt.
Wait, is the attraction we have towards violence caused by deficiency of something in our lives?
Well, I mean, violence in the media gives people the opportunity to experience, you know, violence that they wouldn't normally experience in their everyday life.
Right, it gives you an adrenaline rush without actually having to do anything violent.
I'm gonna go get a Mountain Dew.
Turn
the camera off. You just had one.
Well, anyways, I don't think the way they behaved in the Hunger Games was wrong from any standard.
Why?
Well, because if you're forced to do an immoral action, is that still considered immoral?
I mean, if you're forced to do something that's immoral, then it would technically be considered amoral. I mean, looking at ethics, technically you're still doing the immoral action, so the action is obviously immoral, but you yourself would be acting in an amoral way.
You guys are neglecting to realize that different cultures have different ways of viewing emotions. Changes from culture to culture.
Maybe emotions can serve as a way that we can all understand each other, because it's like a universal language that we can all use to communicate. Even though we view it in different ways, it's something that we can all understand.
Well, maybe, but I guess every person has a different perspective. But, oh well. We're never going to agree on this, so let's not reenact the Hunger Games. So if you find something better to do, then we can just kill each other if it doesn't work out.
No, whatever. Alright kids, the concept we're going to focus on today is the history of the Roman gladiators. Alright, so just so you know, the original concept of gladiators were comprised of slaves and criminals in the Roman Empire. They were forced to fight publicly in a humiliating spectacle of violence for everybody to see. However, after a period of time, the gladiators became the entire spectacle became more of a sport, and the gladiators were people who volunteered to be a part of the professional spectacle for everyone to see. Even though everybody knew how violent and cruel this entire public humiliation was, people continued to support it, and more professional gladiators continued to step up. So the question I want you all to consider today is, to what extent you think rational thinking can influence your moral beliefs in relation to the behavior of the Roman gladiators? Yes, Tyler?
Well, I mean, it's obviously not rational at all. These gladiators made the choice to just kill all of these innocent citizens for no purpose at all. They weren't acting with any morals, and the whole spectacle was completely irrational.
You can't just assume it's irrational or immoral. I mean, these people were criminals. They knew exactly what they were doing, and the people who weren't criminals, they volunteered to do this. They volunteered to participate in killing people. So the criminals knew exactly what they were getting into. They knew what the punishment was, and the people who volunteered knew what they had to do. So you can't say it's irrational. But for morality...
Okay, their morality isn't for us to decide. What was moral then might be immoral now. Within their culture, this form of violence was accepted, but it's kind of like how football is in today's culture, how it's accepted, but tons of people get hurt all the time.
Very true, Allison. Culture plays a very important role in our determination of morality. For example, in our nation, the United States, we have a government that enacts laws to protect us from our violent tendencies as a nation. However, what do you think the governing party of a nation, such as ours or the Romans, has any right to determine what is immoral or moral? Or what gives them the right to determine morality? Yes, Tyler?
Well, I mean, the government is the one that's in charge, and people look to the government to try to figure out what's right and what's wrong. And the government is the only one who can set the standards for what is right and what is wrong, because the government is the only one that can inflict punishment on people for doing something morally wrong. So, I mean, if someone were to go against the government, it'd go against reasoning, which is why we have this set of laws like we do and all the morals that we have.
I agree with Tyler. We tend to go around with popular opinion, and very few people are fit to lead this society. So everybody just follows the leaders, which is called groupthink. And popular opinion is what society believes is important. And without a leader and their belief, society would just crumble. And the public gives the government the right to decide what is important, like morality, and they decide how to deal with it.
See, I feel the opposite way. I actually believe that the government shouldn't have that power because they only use logic to make their decisions. I believe that emotion plays a huge role in the decisions that they should be made. Like, I was just looking at my notes. In psychology, a couple days ago, we were learning about microexpressions, and that's the physical showing of emotions leaking out. So it obviously just kind of shows that emotion needs to be kind of a major part of the deciding factor of dealing with morality.
These points are all very interesting to consider, and I'm really glad that Jacob brought up the importance of emotion, because that does play a huge role in the consideration of morality. So the question I want you now to consider is, to what extent do you think logical reasoning is thrown aside in the desire for emotional satisfaction? Yes, Tyler.
Well, I mean, the gladiators, when they were in the match, they completely disregarded their reasoning. They only focused on their emotions, such as anger and fear, in order to win the match. That's all they really cared about. And reasoning completely doesn't even matter when violence is the issue, because when you're being violent, you're completely excluding reasoning and focusing on emotion.
Well, yeah, it can be true that emotion is the reason they acted the way they did, but pure emotion can't exist without a logical base within it, because you have to know what you're doing to be emotional. And the gladiators were emotionally stimulated. They were told what to do, so they were being logical about what emotional decisions they were
Very
making.
good. Emotion and reasoning are very intricately connected, and that's why we always have to consider both when making any kind of decision. All right, class, it looks like that's all I have time for today. Thank you so much for your participation, and I'll see y'all later. Woo! Go! Take him down! Push him against the board!
Take it out so he can't skate again. Yeah!
Guys, no, he'll get sent to the penalty box.
Is that really all you care about, is him getting sent to the penalty box? You don't care if he physically hurts another person?
You don't say that. Millions of people watch hockey every day.
Awesome! It's awesome!
Okay, so they just do hockey for entertainment purposes? That's stupid.
Do you have any idea how much revenue is being made by these sporting events each year? Think about how much money these people are making. They make so much money. So much money.
This isn't freaking economics, Allison. I mean, it doesn't even matter how much they make. I mean, isn't it immoral, even though they know what they're getting into, isn't it immoral to be fighting for, like, no reason at all? I mean, that's all hockey encourages.
Yeah.
Exactly, which is why the media shouldn't encourage violence.
But society is sending us mixed messages, guys. See, society says that if we perform any violent action, we'll be in jail. But the media encourages violence all the time. I don't understand.
This is a perfect example of what we learned in psychology. Cognitive dissonance. When you have two conflicting ideals, one eventually has to overcome the other.
It's like a fight in your mind.
Exactly. So the example here is that you're confused because the society is telling you not to act in violent ways, but the media is encouraging the violence.
Wait, so violent criminals are influenced by the media, and those who follow the law have the government influence?
For sure, bro. And the hockey players fall somewhere in the middle, because they can commit abuse, and they don't get thrown in jail.
Well, I think it's a good idea that the laws are in place to repress the violence that we naturally have, or else people would just be out there shooting everyone.
Well, that's your belief.
Wait, how can we believe or not believe in something when it's basically based on emotion?
Well, couldn't the question be asked that aren't our beliefs based on emotion?
I think our beliefs are based on a lot of things, like our values, our reasoning, our emotion, and our culture.
Well, see, but why does it even matter what our beliefs are based on? Just because your beliefs aren't something that you can physically see, like emotion, doesn't mean that they're not there. So it shouldn't matter why you believe something. If you believe it, then it's obviously real to you, and it shouldn't matter how everybody else perceives it.
Guys, shut up, the game's back on.
Oh, right.
Alright, so everyone, the topic I wanted to try and discuss today to open this conversation is the concept of the pros of violence in the media. So it's obvious that violence is a big part of our society today, and it's very popular in the media, as seen on shows such as Criminal Minds and The Deadliest Warrior. I believe this is because violence is a basic part of our human nature, and that we are genetically predisposed based on our very primal instincts. So based on this, I believe we can't simply eliminate it from the media, because Essentially, it's a huge part of human nature, and it needs to be prevalent in our society. Based on this, if I believe that if we were in a situation where we were kill or be killed, morality doesn't really play a factor. It's basically thrown out the window. Based on this observation, I'd like to ask you that if our fight or flight instincts have the ability to overcome the morality instilled in us by our culture and our person, our initial instincts, is the study of ethics entirely necessary?
Well, I mean, of course it's necessary. It's a ridiculous question. I mean, we can't possibly have a society without ethics in it. I mean, the society would just fall apart if there was no ethics or morality within any of the people in there. I mean, there could be no form of government. There'd be no way to regulate what people do or don't do. I mean, murder would greatly increase. There'd be no form of currency. And the food supply would diminish due to people stealing it all the time. People would just have no ethics, and the society would fall apart.
Let's see, but Dr. Joyce, what I'd like to bring to everyone's attention is that nothing you just said has any actual basis. This is all in the future, so there's a lot of room for fluctuation. I mean, essentially, ethics is something that you can't determine one standard for. It's something that there are so many different perspectives that you just have to believe that there is no actual certainty in ethics as a whole. So based on that, I could say that potentially the society that you're discussing in the future, in a world without ethics, it could just be a freer place full of people who have eliminated the pressure posed by the standard for morality. And as a result, I mean, we can't deny that we are all violent creatures by human nature. And by setting the standard in the first place, we're just denying everybody the right to be what they naturally ought to. Excuse me. I believe that society as a whole is a shackle on the very basic tendencies that humanity ought to be able to express. And as a result, because our primal instincts are most basic, I think perhaps letting them take control is just the best thing for the world at this time.
Well, Dr. Lohmeier, we could disagree about this all night. But if we bring this back to a concept that we can focus on, like the realm of violence in the media. I mean, movie producers and the media in general portray violence in a very glamorized way. They use special camera angles, special lighting, and different ways to cut the scenes to make violence more appealing to the audience. And we really need to focus on the implications this could have on our society. I mean, this could alter people's beliefs and values and just completely change the way that we think about violence. So, I mean, we've talked about internal attraction quite a bit now. So what I want to focus on is, to what extent do you believe the constant supply of dramatized violence is affecting the upbringing of the current generation? I mean, we could relate this to the nature versus nurture argument for evolution.
Well, going off that, there's studies, twin studies in fact, to prove that violence can be inherited. But I believe that it can also be nurtured. And what I mean is that there are social and cultural influences that affect our behavior and change us. So each culture has a different varying rate of nurturing, and some of these implications can be that murder rates are higher in highly progressive cities because of higher media violence. For example, the United States has a lot of internet access, as you guys know, but other countries may not have the same internet access that we are able to, so we're not as exposed to the media that we're not, but some other people may not be exposed to the same things we are, which affects how violent we can be. Well, we've spent some time discussing violence in the media, but I'm also interested in the effect of interactive violence. So I want to raise the question, to what extent do you think that virtual reality, such as video games, affects the emotional stability of children and teens?
I've actually done quite a bit of studying into the effect of video games on children and teens. What I've discovered is that this type of obsession with these violent video games is based on the fact that the emotions that they feel are the power and control. So that And also, there's a psychologist that I went great in depth with talking to. His name is Rollo May, and he came up with a theory that there are 5 levels of power that people experience, and the first 2 are very destructive. One is manipulating people, and the other one is using people for their own benefit. And I found in a lot of these types of video games that this power, this like manipulative factor, is what attracts a lot of the teenagers, because they can, in some video games, they can be like a warlord killing millions of people just without any consequences or anything. So, I mean, it brings up an attractive aspect, but it also affects them emotionally, because it kind of causes a emotional instability, because they don't really know how to deal with their anger in real life. Now, I was just wondering, to what extent do you guys think hormones or neurotransmitters affect our morality?
That is a very interesting question. Well, we know that hormones and neurotransmitters affect the way we think and act. So, morality is an internalized sense of right and wrong, as we know. And it can be altered if hormones and neurotransmitters have an effect on us. So, our morality could be in jeopardy if seeing violence in movies alters the level of hormones, such as adrenaline, as we talked about earlier. The effects of society would be a systematic desensitization of moral obligation due to the adrenaline junkies that are produced by viewing violence.
Well, the biological aspect of violence. How about that, Dr. Joyce?
That sounds pretty interesting. Sounds like Dr. Murawski over here actually has some premise for our argument.